What's up, everybody? Welcome back to a special creator episode of Hops Geek News, your home for comic books, movies, TV shows. Typically, we feature a beer of the week. This week, we got a really great guest, Keshawn Dodds from Star Child Comics. We have a previous guest, Braxton Cosby, who has been on the show. So you're pretty familiar at this point with Star Child Comics. So he's going to come on and talk about that. He's going to talk about his work on Menzuo, and we're going to have a really great time tonight. So before we get started, of course, some housekeeping items, man. Hops Geek News, any podcasting platform, any social media platform, go ahead, subscribe to us on YouTube, especially. And we're almost to 1,000, man. Hit us there. And that's where you can find all of our good stuff. And if you feel like supporting the show, patreon.com/Hops Geek News goes into the show, such as live Cantina hours, where we have them coming, just about every week. We talk about like Fallout series is going to be one of our Cantina hours. We're going to talk about the Wolverine and Deadpool trailer, all that good stuff. So the best way to do that, subscribe, help the podcast grow. With me, as always, is Lauren. Lauren, how you doing tonight?
I'm good. How are you? I'm still on that high of that trailer. It was just so amazing. I had to watch it 5 times in a row.
It was. We will be getting to that. But like I said, man, we got a guest. Our creator series focuses just on these creators because there are so many creators out there doing some really great things in comic books, in regular books, in movies, whatever it may be. So we want to welcome to the show, Keshawn, man. Welcome to the show. How are you tonight?
I am great and happy to be here with you, Matt and Lauren, and I can't wait to just dive in and get you guys all familiar with Menzuo.
Well, with that said, we're excited. We kind of heard about it a little from Braxton last time he was on our show, but I think it was last summer about now.
So it was a while ago, yeah.
By all means, refresh our memories. And how did you get started into the comic book world, man? What was your geek origin story? That's the first question we always like to ask people.
Well, my geek origin story started way back in the 80s when all the comic books were all fun and real when it came with the stick of gum.
So
I've been in it. My biggest superhero that I always loved was Flash. I always ran and I played.
My man, yes, that's my favorite hero of all time. Yes,
that was my favorite superhero. But as I grew and I love the comic book world, I love storytelling. I just used to create my own stories. And me and my best friend Marcus McDowell at the time, growing up, that's like my twin brother. We always wanted to create our own story. So it goes into a deep dive of darkness, but it comes out in true light. So when he was 17 years old, he was diagnosed with cancer. And unfortunately, he had to go through chemo when he was in the hospital. I would visit him every day. I'd never had any visiting hours, and I would be able to go in there. And he was like, Keshawn, we always wanted to do our own comic book, so let's create it now. So I was like, all right. So, I love to write. He loved to draw. So we would just start going, and I would just start creating some stories. He was like, well, I already got the superhero in mind. And I was like, okay, so who's the superhero? He said, Menzuo. And I'm like, what the heck is a Menzuo? He said, exactly, because we can create our own superhero with our own name, their own origin, and we go from there. And I was like, all right, cool. So we came up with the Sun Prince, and he gets his powers. He's from a different planet, and he has all the best superpowers, but he has to grow into them. And so while we were creating that comic, unfortunately, 11 months later, Marcus passed away. And we're not able to create our first comic. And, I am not an artist. I can't draw, but I can tell a story. So after he passed away, he passed away about 10 days before Christmas. And that was like a real big blow to me. I kind of gave up on a lot of stuff. I sat with his father in February and, he told me a big story about how Marcus worried about me when he passed because he knew I wasn't going to be well. And he was absolutely right. But he gave me all the drawings that he had. And I took them, put them under my bed and slept on them. And how I say the comic book gods and everything else works, I started having these reoccurring dreams of this superhero fighting under a spotlight and blowing away these monsters. And I'm like, this is so vivid. I have to do so. So I started writing. And 6 months later, I had a 300-page manuscript.
Oh, wow.
And so I'm like, I don't know what to do with this. I ended up going to college, playing football in college. Gave it to my professor in my first English class in the beginning of the semester because he was talking about, do people like writing stories? And I said, yeah, actually, I have one. By the end of the semester, he came out and was just mind blown about this superhero, Manunu, that he couldn't even pronounce the name.
Like I was doing before we hit record.
I thought he was playing around, but he just said, it's just something you're going to be a teacher and it's going to be a great tool for you to get kids to read again. So I kind of sat on it. And a few years later, after I graduated, I was teaching in an elementary school in a 4th and 5th grade inclusion class. Kids didn't like school, didn't like to read or write. So I pulled out this 300-page manuscript and started reading it to them. And they fell in love with the story, the superheroes, and it just grew from there. So my first time I published it by myself was in 2003. And it's almost like having a tattoo. You create that first story, you keep writing and keep writing. And I have some other books. And then years down the road, still going and plugging away, I met Braxton Cosby on a whim. How that story, that's another story. We don't have enough time how we met. But I got to attest to his kids saying when they were reading the book that, Dad, you have to sign this guy. This story is amazing. So I say thank you to Braxton kids for noticing my book first, and for him to take a chance on me, that we've created a whole universe with my stories, the Cape, the Majesties of Canaan, and all the authors that come together. And, a few years later, you get to a point where I have all these novels, but I always wanted to go back to create my first comic book. And I was in the middle of going from book 4 to book 5. And for the first time, I didn't have an arc. I didn't have a bridge to get there.
Oh.
And so I was like, Braxton said, Keshawn, comic book. And the light switch went off and we went full-fledged into creating a comic book. So you have the Menzuo series, and then we did something that, you love Marvel Comics, you love DC, when you have all your superheroes in different areas, but they all come together. So we were able to do the same thing with Braxton. And how I say iron sharpens iron, we wanted to create our own universe. So we created the Infinity 7 universe where all of our superheroes can come together and fight for the greater good, but they all have their own storylines. And I'm telling you, when I say this was probably one of the most unique, fun activities that I could ever have, is to have 3 authors create a book together and challenge each other on each chapter. So it was like, okay, I wrote 4,000 words. Next, you tag Braxton in. I wrote 4,500. Kyle Champion
keep like upping and you just that's a great way to do it, because then you did this many, it's almost like a competition.
Yes,
but
you're working towards a common goal, though. It's fun.
Absolutely. And then the story just built itself. It's almost like we were able to see the art in storytelling and how we understood each character, because we all did research on everyone's character, how they talk, what they're about, their backgrounds, the good side, the bad, their challenges that they have. We understood their characters. So when we were writing about their characters in our stories, it was like, how in God's name do you know my character so well? We paid attention. We went to school. We went to Star Child Comics Cosby Media School. So it was really good. And it comes to turn, we have, the Infinity 7 series that we've all created. So all of our characters are together. And we also have our own series that's just magnified and blowing up.
That's amazing. Like a beautiful origin story. So your friend, his parents, do they get to see a little bit of their son live through these stories?
Oh, so how it goes. So when you get a chance to read it, and this is the best part. I don't tell people when they read it, but now it's out. It's been out for so long. When you read it, you'll see that Menzuo is actually me. It's Keshawn. Oh. I created a superhero named Solar who lives in his crystal. He's actually a spirit that comes back in, and he's actually the one that gives Menzuo his superpowers. He unlocks his superpowers. And in the first book, we battled this pirate warrior named Morbid. Morbid means death. And so Menzuo and Solar, Keshawn and Marcus, fight Morbid, which is a cancer, and we beat it. So it's more than just a superhero story.
Damn.
And it's very deep. And so it's about, redemption and keeping my friend's name alive. And also, when you read the story, you see that Solar was actually his brother that passed away when Menzuo was born. So they're always tied together. So it's the way that, it's one of the best things that I can say when you're doing science fiction and fantasy and art. You can bring people back to life. You can do some great things with the storytelling, but also you can heal from it. And a lot of people get to see the story that, wow, this is not just a regular superhero. It's a lot more. It's a deep story that's within it.
Layers. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, you were talking about how you guys were so young too, and you just grew up that was your person. We all have these life mates that you go through life with, and that was kind of how you were devastated. And it's you used that. It hurt, but you used that to fuel you in a way, and it's got to be therapeutic at the same time. And now a piece. You guys are kind of forever immortalized together, your story, and it's a way to also keep the memory alive. I think that's a very beautiful thing. And
it gets deeper than that. I've been able to create some great things with Braxton, and like I said, iron sharpens iron. we always try to expand on what we're doing with our series and other books. But I was able to COVID hit. That's that was, I think, the time when the world shut down.
Yeah, everything paused. Yeah.
And we had to figure out how to keep ourselves occupied. The worst thing for an adult with ADHD that loves to write and create, you learn something new. So I decided to teach myself how to do 3D animation.
Oh, cool.
And so I taught myself how to do that and took that year and a half, and I created my own Menzuo series, which you can see on YouTube. So you can type in Menzuo, you can watch a 30-minute clip. I know how hard it is to create it, how much it costs, but the dedication that I put into it was to do this and actually see my characters come to life. And the best thing in that I have is with my fraternity, Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. Our foundation is St. Jude's, and I'm on the Northeastern province region of raising funds for it. But I wanted to do something that's always been near dear to my heart. I wanted to tie in my best friend to donate money to St. Jude's. So everything. So what I'm trying to do with my animation is all the clicks and all the money that's ever raised through my animation, it will go directly to St. Jude's and Marcus's name on behalf of my fraternity. And so it's one way that I want to always give back and understand that, when you live through something that's so devastating, you want to make sure that you can attack it and not let it consume you to the point where you can't move. Because I was there, but I also want to give back to make sure people have a better life.
That's amazing. St. Jude's is one of my favorite charities. And unfortunately, I've had a friend have to use them. And yeah, they're fantastic.
Amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah. That's one of the more beautiful stories that we've heard, especially
I wasn't emotionally prepared for this episode.
I'm sorry.
That's beautiful. I love that because it kind of shows everybody that comic books, they can be created from all walks of life. You don't
absolutely
have to, and it just because it's a superhero doesn't mean there's no deeper meaning. It has a very impactful meaning.
It's really does
dividends even today. You created this so long ago, but look what you're doing today. Everything you're donating from your YouTube series goes straight to a really good cause, which is going to pay it forward even more. And that's real life superhero right there, man.
That's what I think. I think the people that I run into, especially when I get an opportunity to speak to Hops Geeks and news and doing this to spread the word, because I know it's genuine. We all have that dream of having a Marvel, DC, and everything else. We want to be out there to be known and to be in a space. But it's when you get to that space, what do you do with it? And my thing was, I want to make sure I give back and make sure the doors are open. And that's how Braxton and myself and his team has come together, because we saw something more than just, he's out here just trying to make money. No, we're trying to build a legacy, not for just us, but for everyone else in the walk that we're doing that is possible from, the ground up. And so our floodgates are open. People are coming and I'm sitting with you, Matt and Lauren. You're like, oh my God, I wasn't ready. Good.
Well, and I looked at your bio and went through everything and had a couple questions ready, and then you just totally just took me by surprise, but in a beautiful, amazing way. And I love there's all these layers and everything. So one of the things I love that took me by surprise when I talked to Braxton was the fact that you guys do comics and novels and they're intertwined.
Yes.
So I think that's really cool, because there are weeks I just want to read comics and there are weeks I just want to read a novel. So how is the process with that? And what is the ratio of how many novels do you have for this character versus comic books? And if somebody wanted to jump in right now, where would you suggest they start?
Honestly, I've always told people start at the beginning, but you can pick up any book, but it's going to pull you back to seeing what happened in the beginning. How did this story come about? The comic books, I have one comic out right now. The next comic is going to be out by the end of this year. And I created 4 books in the beginning of the series. There's going to be 7 or 8 that end the series. So there's 4 that start the series. Then we have the Infinity 7 books that jump in. And then there's going to be the next side of it is when he's older. So from 12 years old to 18, Menzuo is going through all of these challenges and trials and tribulations to be where he is. And so after that arc, you get to that 5th book, he's in his 20s now, because there's a little bit of a gap. And so now it gets a little bit more darker. It's stronger storylines. There's characters that have to come in from the Cape, from Braxton's books, from Kyle Champions, from the Majesties of Canaan. And the universe has grown so much. It's not even just our universe that I created. It's the 7 realms that we have from Infinity 7. So there's more that Menzuo and his characters and his team have to deal with. And so I like the fact that said every. So what book do you like the most? I said every last one of them. But when you get to the one that you're writing now, when you see how dark it gets, the challenges, and also the conflicts that Menzuo and his team have to go through, I get excited to see what's going to happen because in your mind you have where you want to end, but it changes from every chapter.
Oh yeah. I have no doubt that organically, that's the way the story flows. We might be like, oh, I have the ending in mind. And then as you're writing it, it's like, well, wait a second. Let's divert from that. So like,
Oh,
do you find that kind of to be like, do you typically find yourself in that position or like just flowing? What are some things that you do to get creatively going?
So the funny thing, if you listen to epic superhero music on YouTube as a backdrop or epic villain music, it's gonna put you in a different mind state of seeing everything. So I hear the instrumentals and it puts me where everything that I write when I'm doing my comic books or my novels, I see like a movie. I'm just like engulfed. I take it like never ending story. When you're reading the story, then you're in the story. That's how I feel when I'm writing my book. So I become each one of my characters. I see the setting, I smell what's there, I hear the sounds, and it tells itself. So when I think it's going one way, and then something else happens, and I'm like, oh my goodness. So as you know, you guys, when you're writing or what you're doing, you might end up seeing that you started at 10 o'clock at night and it's 4 a.m.
Right.
You can't stop. Oh crap! I gotta go to work.
You get lost in it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it takes you on a journey, and I love that.
Oh yeah.
So one of the things when I was reading the background and on the website and everything, and I saw, and you just mentioned it too, that this character starts at 12 years old. So I had saw that you were a teacher and I assumed, oh, he must just be trying to relate to the kids. So was that to relate to the kids, or was it because of what you went through at a young age with your best friend, or a little bit of both?
It was a little bit of both. You wanted to grab the kids and kind of get that age group interested in reading. So I wanted them to have a character that they can see growing up with. So at 10 years old, 12 years old, the kid grows up in Springfield, Massachusetts, where I was a teacher, where I grew up and I'm born and raised. And he grows up here, goes to schools that they know, they see things that they know, he's playing video games. So I wanted to relate to that young side of the fan base. And as the books grow and they grow, they get to see the growth of themselves through the stories and also the my characters. So the funny part is when I wrote this book, those kids are adults and they still talk about the stories and they pick up the books and now they're reading. Some of them are starting to read them to their nephews and their kids that are starting to grow up as well.
That's really cool.
I'm sure a lot of them, that was like their introduction into like this kind of world. Like we've all heard of superheroes and stuff like that, but for a lot of kids, like to be introduced at a young age, they're impressionable, right? It sticks with them. And for that to be like, this was my introduction to this whole wider world of novels and comic books. That's also got to be a really good feeling too, as a writer, to be like, oh wow, like people still come up to you like this today. Yeah.
Yeah.
And as a teacher, it's like they're listening,
Yeah. So if you go to my Instagram or my yes, I have what is it? Twitter, and I also have TikTok. So
it's okay, we do too. Don't worry.
Everybody, I got YouTube as well. I actually just did a school visit and I was showing the clips from my from the animation and reading the story to the kids. The reaction that I got, it almost brought me to tears because they were so into it. So this is a new group of kids that are relating to my stories. And I was like, oh my God. And they were just like, we love the story. So they're following and they're checking up and they want more. So I know my job is done with my best friend Marcus to get kids to read, to understand that, I can pick up these other books. I can get into comic books. I can create my own. So we're starting that legacy again. We just keep producing because as we know, we're geeks and we love it. So back when we were younger, you kind of had to hide that. You don't have to hide it now. You can
we can be proud about it. Yeah, it's
absolutely.
Media is being made predominantly for us now, right? Like look at how many things that were booked.
X-Men 97.
Yeah,
oh my gosh, I know.
That's for adults. That's not for kids.
It is amazing getting to see how many things that are now. It's like, oh yeah, this is a book. You got to read the book because the movie's coming out, and vice versa. And it's great. And then especially, the impact that it had, like it shows how timeless these stories are at the same time, because this was written when you were a young age and came from a place, and then kids who are younger than you were or younger, it's like this story could resonate with them because maybe somebody you don't know picks up this book and it's like, this is the book that they needed at this exact moment. And really, like, again, that's just what makes these stories beautiful. They're timeless, and somebody's going to pick something out of it, and it's going to be something different every person. Like, put three of us in a room, read the same story, we're all going to take something different from it.
Exactly.
100%, yeah.
And that's what's truly amazing.
Right.
Now,
right.
I know people who are like, I can't read a comic book, but I will read a novel. And I know people who are like, I can't sit there and read a whole novel, but I can read a comic book.
Yes.
So can they still follow the story along well if they just stick to the novels or just stick to the comic books?
Absolutely. Like I said, when you start to read the comic books, he's in an older age, so you're not going to get the backstory. It's almost like how Star Wars grabbed us. They started at 5, 6, and 7, or 4, 5, and 6. And you got to go back to now. They have 1, 2, and 3. And it's like, oh my gosh, I love the way they did that.
Right.
So you can start at any side of it, but then you're always going to want to go back. And what we're doing now, I was going to try to create a comic book in between each one of the novels. I still may do that, but the novels that I have going, the comic books that I have going forward, would tell the story of Menzuo with the cape, with the Majesties of Canaan, and all the other superheroes that we have moving forward. So, we want to grab as many readers as possible. Like you said, I don't want to read the novels, but I want to, grab the comic book. But we also have audiobooks as well. So there's a lot of different ways that we're trying to grab people. And also, with me doing the animation, we're trying to get into that realm as well, because people like those quick clips. My newest one that I'm creating now was able to grab and create some of the Cape superheroes, some of the Majesties of Canaan, and put them into the stories. And so it's just a lot of fun. It's a lot of hard work, but it's a lot of fun.
So you're kind of doing the Star Wars approach where you're just building out
yes
kind of thing.
Yes.
So you'll fill in little things and tell backstories of certain things that happen, kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
So I mean, yeah, if we can follow Star Wars, we can follow anything.
And
honestly.
Yeah, really, because when you read the stories, as an author, you pay homage to some of your superhero friends or books. Because Menzuo, Jamal Hall in the first book, he is a huge Star Wars fan. Who is me right here? So it goes like, so you just mention it because you want to make sure that people understand that this isn't all just just real new. You have all these influences that make you want to be in that realm. And in the story, when Solar is telling him, that's real, and he's like, "There's no way Star Wars is real." Yeah, that's a real story. So
it happened in a galaxy far, far away.
Exactly.
History. Yeah,
we're just now picking up the transcripts from space.
Exactly, that's the truth.
So obviously, you just mentioned Star Wars as an inspiration. What are some other things that have inspired you that you can, have influenced you in your storytelling?
Oh my goodness. You're looking at all the comics that you have, the stories, even the newer ones from, growing up, Dragon Ball Z, and how the story plays. Yeah. I try to tell people when I watch movies or cartoons or animation, I watch them very different than a lot of people. I don't watch it just to watch it. I look at the storyline. A lot of people say, "Oh, that movie was horrible." And I'm like, no, that was amazing. The storyline, the way it was written, the way it's played out, that's actually a really good story. So I see it differently. And so I get a lot of inspiration from a lot of different authors, from the Hyperion series that was out there, just how he created worlds, and just other authors. If you look at my audiobook, I have, or my books that I've read last year is about 24, 25 books. And I just really get into how character development, our stories are written, because I'm just trying to see how do you grab an audience from every different area. And it's like, wow, I learn a lot from just reading and also just studying what other authors do.
Mm-hmm. I like that you see the wheels turning when you're watching something.
Absolutely.
You see how it was made. Sorry, Matt.
No, I was just going to say that's a good point, and it kind of brings up this question here. It's like, obviously you started at a young age, you put yourself in this character.
Yes.
How, as you've continued to write, as you've gotten older, have your characters evolved with you, or is there anything that you like past experiences you continue to put in there, or things like what are you still putting just as much as yourself in there as you were when you first started?
A lot of the characters kind of like Menzuo, Jamal Hall, he's grown outside of being just me. He's living the life inside of the story and what he's facing outside of just Earth and going into the universe and the things the challenges that come into his life and how he handles it. A lot of it is my thought process, but some of the decisions I have to make are somewhere outside of our realm. I don't know if you guys watch WWE and how that works.
Oh my God. Yes, I do. Yeah. Hell yeah, I do.
So you know where I'm going with this.
Tribal Chief.
So yes, the tribal. So you know how how people create the heel characters.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
So some of that happens in with some of the characters because they're genuinely nice. They're superheroes and they're on the good side, but some of their attitudes become heel. And you're
Seth
like,
Rollins.
I don't like them, but I like him because he does things that just doesn't fit into what you would expect. And so you pull from all these different avenues of writing and storytelling. And like I said, people know WWE isn't real, but you're stuck into the storylines because it's so good.
You really
that's
do.
what you try to do when you're right.
A good story, man. People vastly underestimate how impactful a good storyline can do. You know, with whether it's comic books or like you said, WWE, like, yes, we understand. They're all probably friends backstage, but right now, like they are selling, they're actors, man. It's like they're selling it, and trust me, man, those chair shots and things are real. I don't care.
Oh my God, they're real.
They take real bumps, man. They're actually going through tables, but like that just, if you have a good story, it doesn't matter. You're going to get sucked in, and having the visual pieces that you guys have and having the written pieces that you guys have. Honestly, I love that method in its own right. And then it shows that you as a writer, like you said, you've got 20 plus books out and evolving with your characters and showing them that you're not putting them in a box. You're organically growing them. And that's important. And I think that also speaks to how talented you are. And that's what people are going to keep coming back to. It's going to keep people engaged.
Right. And the best thing I got to tell you, this all is because of the vision of what Braxton Cosby has. And, you know, this, I can't underestimate his vision of what he has for not just the Menzuo series, but also for all other authors that come into Cosby Media Productions and Star Child Comics. And, you know, like I said, I have my books written out and I know where I wanted to go, but we will sit down and brainstorm and say, hey, we want to create this universe where everybody's tied in. Let's see if we can do X, Y, Z. How do you feel about that? And I'm like, wow, it kind of makes you take your characters and your story on a different journey than what you thought, but it makes it so much more impactful because at the end of the day, you know, when Braxton had his thought process of, okay, Keshawn just mentioned something in Hero City with the capes in one of your chapters, just mention it. So I do, and went on the rewrite, but then a year later, we're writing Infinity 7, and I'm like, you are a monster on how you created this. You've already set the background of how we came together. And that's a lot of trust and faith in what you're doing with the person that owns your company, and the faith that you putting your books in their hands and your characters in their hands. And Braxton has done an amazing job for all of us.
Right, because they're characters you care about quite deeply.
Absolutely.
It's been great getting to talk to you and hearing your story. Like I absolutely have loved it. And I hope a lot of people are out there. Why don't you go ahead as we wrap up, let everybody kind of know where they can find your books, where they can find you, if you have any upcoming appearances at all.
Okay. So right now you can find me on newageofheroes.com. So www.newageofheroes.com. Keshawn Dodds on YouTube. I am author Keshawn Dodds. I am Keshawn Dodds on Twitter. Author Keshawn Dodds on TikTok, and author Keshawn Dodds on Instagram. You just type in Keshawn Dodds, you'll find me. So
everything's in the show notes too. So if you're like, where does that at again?
Future, we're working on. I know we're going to try to release our own Comic Con, the New Age of Heroes Comic Con. We'd love to have you guys stream in if you can't come. It's going to be in Springfield, Massachusetts. We're looking at November 9th, but we may have to change that date. But we're trying to do some great things to bring all of us together and to make sure that we can just expose not just the Menzuo series, but every independent author, illustrator, comic book creator, novelist, and just blow this whole thing out the water.
Absolutely. And let me know when that is for sure, because that's about an hour and a half west of where I grew up and my family is. So,
okay.
I got friends out there, so it's easy money to get there if I'm able to. But seriously, we really appreciate your time. Getting to hear your story, man. We would love to. Anytime you want to come back through, you got a spot here at the show. We would love to get to chat some more. Everybody, check this out, man. If this doesn't sell you alone, I don't know what to tell you. I don't think you have a soul, because this is a beautiful story, and it's a really, really well done series. Check them out. Everything's in the notes of the show. Thank you guys for listening. We will be back here shortly with some more great creator series. Check out the rest of our podcast episodes, but especially if you do one thing, check out this series right here. Keshawn, thank you one more time, man, and we will catch everybody soon.
And thank you to Hops Geeks News. Love you guys.
Anytime, man. Anytime.
All right.
Cheers.
Bye.